Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is your daily support call from How To Project. Today, we're very fortunate. We have Master NLP, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. We have a master practitioner, dear friend of mine, Fasana Patel. Today, we're going to talk about, the same thing that we've been talking about all along, the fears, the uncertainties, the challenges, this shift in how things are unraveling for us as a global community. It's open conversation. If you have any questions, you can either jump in or you can type them in the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that as we're having a conversation with Fasana. It's not a formal structured interview or anything like that. It's just more, people helping people. So let's start with Fasana. Thanks for being here. I always appreciate you.
Absolutely. I'm a little bit like I'm fully charged for this conversation for you guys, as you can tell. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Marcus for extending this invitation to me, because it's really important that we come together in the communities that we had previously formed, but really stand together in this collective of providing positive energy, leadership, guidance for ourselves in our community, but also that ripples out into the rest of the world. So thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah, no problem. And I already have things that we can unpack from what you've said, and I love doing that. It's what I do for a living, listen to what people say and then figure out how to expand on it to get some more practical solutions.
Yes.
So you talked about things like positive energy and the collective and the rippling. Now, in a state of where we're practicing, what is it called? Social distancing. So in a state where everybody is isolated, how do we actually still have that type of ripple effect on one another?
That's a really great question. So social distancing should actually be termed physical distancing, because clearly we're being very social right now, leveraging the gift of technology, right? Where we can all be together. I have 3 new friends here, Victor, Natasha, and Nicole. And it's amazing. You've introduced me to 3 new souls that I wouldn't have known had we not decided to get on here, right? So social distancing is, I personally coined the term, you'll love this one, Marcus, intentional isolation for myself about a week ago. Because what I'm doing personally, I know a lot of leaders are also doing this. They're using this time and space to really realign their focus and accomplish more of what they were looking to do, but whatever excuses may have gotten in the way, now we can really just get a lot of stuff done, right? This morning I had this divine download, and instead of the word isolation, I actually reframed it, because I thought to myself personally, isolation sounds like it's coming from a scarce or fear-based place, whereas solitude, that made me feel much better, because that's actually what I'm intentionally doing, is strengthening my connection to source, right? Is strengthening my connection to myself, getting my book finished, connecting with like-minded leaders around the world who are doing similar things to what you're doing here with the How To Project. So I hope I answered your question.
Well, sort of. And I mean, you went in a different direction, which is okay, because you're right.
Yeah.
Words have power. I'm a huge fan of being very precise with words. I'm also a huge Superman fan. And if you think about it, he has his fortress of solitude. It's where he goes to recharge, have time for himself, just to get away from it all. But really, that is intentional isolation. And just the difference of wording makes all the difference in intent, right?
Yes.
And I do like that, because having that intention to focus on getting rid of whatever stories we've been telling ourselves before, and getting rid of any excuses we had, not enough time, too busy, not enough focus. Well, guess what? Here we are. It's a gift when you look at it that way. It's an opportunity to really focus in. So tell us about some of the things you've been focused in on then.
Yeah, sure. I think that a lot of us, I was just having this conversation with a client and great friend of mine, actually, and we were chatting about the fact that whether we had asked for this, let's say, period of potential growth or not, every single human being on the planet is somewhat outside of our normal comfort zone in ways that we may not have, well, none of us anticipated, really. So I know that you and I were discussing the concept of fear the other day, and what's happening right now, and how it's sort of, for people who understand personal development, and understand that when you're in your comfort zone, you're safe, you're not growing. So being out of the comfort zone and experiencing this fear that naturally is coming up from time to time, I'm highly empathic. So there will be times where I'm just feeling a lot of energy or sadness or frustration or depression. And that's not who I am anymore. So I know that those emotions don't belong to me, right? So it's about really identifying, okay, what do I need to do to shift my state and to realign my focus to get back into focusing on what I'm up to? Like I mentioned, I'm finishing my book, which has been such a long time coming, which and the pivoting of what's happening right now, right? I think it's really important for us to stay as positive and grounded as we can and focus on all of the silver lining components to what's going on right now, right? We're being asked to, I mean, when we chatted earlier, we were talking about how excited we are to get together once all of this settles so we can like heart hug, right? That's our favorite thing to do. And at the same time, it's like, I think that for people, I guess, like me, it's really, really easy to fall into a place of focusing on things that you don't necessarily desire or want. And that can be a dangerous place because then there's a lot of time, there's a lot of energy that is being displaced or wasted. We don't want that. That's not productive. It's not helpful. It's not helping you grow to that next level of success. I believe that everything happens divinely orchestrated. It's all happening for a reason. There's a huge, energetic shift happening, an awakening happening on our planet where light workers, healers, speakers, coaches, mentors, they're all really understanding how valuable our services really are. And so for me, at least, I'm using this as an opportunity to push myself and just grow as much as possible.
Right. Well, and it's very exciting. Again, so many things to discuss every time you speak. You're right. I mean, there's been a very global community aspect to everything. A lot of the leaders in our world have come forward, not just in the political space, but in the mindset space, motivational space, business space. People just coming forward to offer assistance and expertise, guidance, and even just a little bit of encouragement. Because you're right. I mean, it's almost divisive the way fear works. It's quite interesting because what we've seen is on the one hand, we have people that are so afraid. They're so afraid that they're, reacting in violence so they can have the next roll of toilet paper. Just crazy things happening out of fear because it's such an emotional based response. But then we have other people on the other end of fear that they don't know how to cope with it. So they minimize it and dismiss it as being a threat at all. It's all government conspiracies and hoaxes. And at the end of the day, I mean, fear is a valid response. And I know there's some that teach, ignore your fear, push through fear. And then there's others like myself that are like, well, no, fear is healthy. Fear is a part of the human experience. If it wasn't for fear, you'd walk across the street and get hit by a car. So listen to your fears and acknowledge them, but don't let them overcome you.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, those fears still have to be translated into some type of forward action, like you said. We've talked about it a few times over the last week on these calls, is that I personally, from the people that have been on here, the people in my massive network that I've been talking with, different subject matter experts, I don't think what we're seeing is a temporary hit to the economy. I think what we're actually seeing, you said pivot, which is a word I've been using, we're witnessing the demise of the traditional rat race, right? The old way of doing business, which has been actually since the last depression, which ironically was in the 20s, it's not going to continue that way anymore. While there's always going to be some businesses that have to be hands-on in many respects, a lot of businesses are making that fundamental shift. They're going to have to learn how to exist in this technology world, how to work with distributed teams, how to keep people motivated and create a work culture of emotional investment, even though everyone's not together physically. I don't think things are just going to temporarily be like this. I think there's greater profitability from a business point of view because you're reducing a lot of expenses. So it's more the work that you do and people like you is how do you create the right mindset in a virtual work culture. So what are some tips you can have for us right now, the people here? I'm going to open it up to them after to see if they have any questions or struggles, but what does your daily routine look like right now? What is keeping you elevated?
That is such a great question, Marcus. Oh my goodness. Morning routines are everything. That is something that I've adopted for myself to really help me with my structure and discipline every single day. Because when you think about it, every single morning when we wake up, it's a fresh start, right? It's a new beginning in a sense. You get to be whoever you choose to be in this new day. And so for me, what I've realized and noticed is by having a healthy morning routine, and I'll go through some of the things that I do in my routine. It completely helps me to focus and ground myself and really operate from the frequency, the vibration, the mindset that I love to operate from. Because I like to do um, almost like social experiments using myself. I beta test a lot of my theories on myself, right? And it's the sociologist in me, I guess. And I've had days where I've not done my routine and just woken up and just kind of flowed through the day and started getting into my tasks and my calls and my meetings and whatnot. And I noticed this huge difference. Um, Again, centering myself and really, I think that a lot of people that are in a position of leadership, and all of us on this call and all of us in our communities count, in my opinion, as leaders in today's day and age, in today's world, because we all attract who we are. And I think that it's really important for us to honor and respect ourselves, show ourselves that self-love that's so necessary in our times today, where, for example, when I wake up, I read 2 chapters of 2 books that I'm studying right now. I listen to audiobooks. There's a variety of things that I listen to right now. It's a lot of like Joe Vitale and Joe Dispenza. Very positive, very motivational, very encouraging mindset conversations. I pray, I stretch, I do yoga. I have to include movement in there. And lately, because I'm not able to get to the gym and do cardio, I was planning on going for a run outside today. I was really proud of myself because I typically don't do that. But then I looked outside and it was snowing. So I switched it up and I boxed a little bit and did some breath work instead.
Oh,
Um, yeah, that's not something typically that I would do, breath work. It's not something that I've been familiar with, even though I was doing it organically and unconsciously while I work out, not realizing that that's something that's super, super effective and healthy for me personally. So started
mhm.
doing that. I did some breath work before our call and I was like, yeah, oxygen's getting to my blood. I feel a lot better. Okay, this is good. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, and I love some of the things you said there. Mostly what I loved is that you were like, I experiment on myself.
Yeah.
And I find that it's a funny statement the way you said it, but it's also something I teach in our business mentoring programs is
Mm.
test everything, right? Because you can be given a morning routine. Like you said, we could document this today and we could say, okay, here's a great morning routine. Wake up, give your gratitudes, do some prayers. Here's the kind of things you pray for step by step. Listen to an Audible book. Here's some great free Audible books right now because they've opened up a ton of free business education books right now on Audible, which is exciting. And then when you're done that, here's a stretching routine, including good movement through yoga and a breathwork technique. And you could list every single thing and the people here could download that and they might go through it and it might not work for them.
Right.
Right? Does it make
Right.
it wrong? No, it's just
Yeah.
something that you have to test to see what works for your experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something else that's been interesting for me in this philosophy, and I think Victor can relate to this, is the way I equate it to men a lot, because men, depending on age and upbringing, we're not all touchy-feely and divine downloads and things like that. So I relate it to sometimes you'll see people at the gym
Yeah.
and they're there and they're going through the workout, but their intention is to finish the workout. They're not actually fully present to do the workout. And I think any routine you develop for yourself, whether it's a work routine, a personal routine, whatever it is, it's truly about being fully present and
Right.
experiencing the moment, not simply going through the routine blindly again and again and again and again, because
Yeah.
then you get less and less attached to it and it just becomes something that's no longer working. So if you're not testing these things, if you're not looking for how to measure whether it's actually progressing you or not, then I don't think it's worth having a routine at all in that scenario.
Absolutely.
I've actually started adopting running again too, because there's a track right outside of our house. And
Mhm.
yeah, so this morning I downloaded a Tabata app and I'm going to be doing 30 minutes of Tabata cardio. So I'm a little terrified about that. But that's great. So you've got some good routines. Now, what does your work routine look like right now?
Right now, my work routine is from noon to about 6, 7 p.m. So in that time and space, it's really interesting. A lot of my spiritual principles that I live by haven't been because I've always been this like woo woo sparkly unicorn, type chick who wants to, speak from this spiritual place. It's actually been based on like the unfolding of my life and the events that have happened that I honestly, Marcus, cannot logically explain.
Right.
And, you know, when it comes to divine orchestration, recently an opportunity fell into my lap. I haven't even told you about it. But essentially, the opportunity is for like-minded people, entrepreneurs who want to get more involved in the digital space, right? In the virtual space, create an online platform to increase their revenue and just create an additional stream of income. And it was completely, of course, it always has to be in alignment with my mission, with my vision, raising the consciousness of the world. But that actually has, I guess, shifted. It's changed my workflow slightly. So again, I operate best in float state. So from 12 to 7 p.m., I am on calls. I'm writing, right? I'm scheduling calls with my community and colleagues that we haven't really, that we plan on catching up with. I'm losing my words here. This is a fasted call for me, by the way.
Okay.
I haven't eaten yet today, so forgive my energy and my lack of words here. But my work days flow as long as I actually have it right here. I have to have this little list with me all the time so that I keep myself on track, and I have my little my must-do list. And as I check things off all day, as long as I'm congruent and focused and actually being productive versus just meditating all day,
Right.
sort of where I'm at.
Well, so I like this. And again, it's almost as if you've been watching these calls or know someone like me, for example, for the last few years. You're hitting so many of the right check marks on what we've been talking about through these calls and even through our business development programs. Well, yeah, for example, you've got dedicated work time, and I'm assuming you set up boundaries like the door is closed, do not disturb. This is my dedicated work time because I'm in a flow state and I don't want to be
Big
pulled
time.
to it prematurely. You have checklists, and checklists at the very basic first step. That's project management, right? That's step one is make the plan, know what I'm going to be working on today, and then actually work the plan. And you talked about calls. I'm assuming some of those are sales calls, some of those are follow-up calls, getting your work done, but not staying focused on one thing, switching to doing some writing so that you're constantly staying active and fresh. Now, you did bring up, and I mentioned it briefly, flow state. Some people might not have any idea what a flow state is. So can you take us into your interpretation of flow states, please?
Yeah, so I just saw this beautiful Venn diagram earlier. So those pictures, you guys, where the two circles and then they come together and they're connected in the middle. So I want you to imagine that particular diagram. It kind of looks like an infinity symbol. And you have surrender on one side, you have discipline on the other, and where they meet in the middle is where your flow state exists. Flow it ties back into what you were saying about the morning routine, right? My morning routine works for me because I've tried and tested it for so long. I know when I'm most aligned or connected to source. That for me is flow. When I'm operating in I like to say, highest vibration, and my soul is at peace and I'm just able to show up and serve authentically, that for me is flow state. So that's why I mentioned the morning routine first and foremost, because if I choose not to do what I know to do, well, then I have some shadow work to do, but that's a different conversation. Flow is really allowing myself to be led by my higher self throughout the day, allowing myself to be open to receiving the right connections and the right energies and opportunities that are in alignment with my big goals, with my vision, and staying focused pretty much throughout the day, being productive throughout the day, getting work done, and really just being in a space of enjoying myself. I'm really big on that. I'm really big on playing while I work. A few of my colleagues in the personal development industry have termed that term as, they've coined it as plurking.
Got it. Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. I mean, and I think for people like you and I, like we're like really positive, bubbly people. That's just our authentic personality, or at least that is how we are with each other. And I enjoy being that way with the people that I work with. It just, it's more fulfilling to me in terms of like what my soul is looking for when it comes to work. I enjoy that. So being in flow is more fun. And it's okay for it to be that way because I am most productive in that state, which I think is so cool.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think part of what you're talking about there is self-awareness,
Yes.
and we are alike in many ways. And I've actually recently, as part of my routine, I do a lot of journaling, daily journaling, weekly planning, that kind of thing. And I've actually started using a system called EVO. And what I like about this particular system, it's part hand, it's part digital, but what they do is you actually take a personality evaluation first. And in the personality evaluation, it's like any other system. You end up being one of 4 archetypes and you can dive down into it. And then when you purchase your journal, it's actually based on your personality type so that you actually have a better chance of doing it. And one of the key things they identified in myself that I'd actually fought against a lot previously was daily play. For me, it's important. Some people, they're like, no, I'm just going to work for the next 16 hours straight. And that's okay. It brings them happiness. That's not me. I need to have those breaks for play. And I'd never really identified it and had punished myself for it for so long because, what type of business person wants to play throughout the day, right? So it's finding what's your truth and based on your personality. Now, all of these words sound beautiful. We're talking about things like flow states and higher vibrations and being connected to source and vibrating and being directed by higher selves.
Yeah.
Here we are though, where, the infection rate's spreading and food supplies are starting to become a little bit congested and backed up and services are closing. And even yesterday, our call connection started to get choppy. So what do you do when the fear starts to creep in from the sides? Like what scares Fasana and how does she work through that process? Because I think that's relevant, always relevant, but especially with the state the world is in right now.
Yeah. A lot of things scare Fasana. I mean, with what's happening right now, I've learned how to really shift my attitude to the state of gratitude. I know that sometimes for people who are new to personal development and may not understand this level of conversation, I know it kind of sounds really woo-woo or cliche. But the truth is, Marcus, like if I were the version of myself that I was 10 years ago, I would probably be in a frantic, panicked, frightened, scared state and just not know what to do with myself and curl up on the couch and watch TV or be glued to the news, right? Rather than choose to use this time to be productive and again, focus on my growth, like I said I was. And I think that this really boils down to, embracing and accepting the authentic level of leadership that is my job, is my purpose, let's say, because I'm very thankful that my family, both my soul family and my biological family, everyone is being very responsible with the virus and what's going on right now. They're taking the appropriate precautions. They're social distancing. We've been bonding a lot. We've been spending a lot more time together, having downtime together, watching movies, having dinner and meals, preparing food. It's been great. And I really haven't, see, if I get on that side of feeling the fear and letting it take over my being, I kind of like back in the day, I remember myself getting into like days of just wanting to be very lethargic, stay in bed with the blanket over my head and avoid everything and everyone because the anxiety and the fear would get too much to handle. So for people who are experiencing, fear at that level, remember that this virus preys on weak immune systems. Fear is something that weakens our immune system. So it's really important to really get to the root cause of what's going on here so that you can, like you said, have self-awareness, but most importantly, empower yourself as an individual. Meditation is something that is so great for helping the mind eliminate, reduce, or completely release the fear so that you can come back to a place of center. And what's so beautiful about the space and time that we live in is that there are so many free resources online that people can tap into to learn more about meditation, to learn more about coping mechanisms. There's so many healers that I know personally that are, and I, including you in this group, Marcus, that are facilitating group activities online to help people stay connected and also develop deeper connection within themselves. Personally, some of the things that I'm getting into in my journey right now is EFT tapping and breath work, like I mentioned. I haven't done those things before. I haven't utilized those modalities in my life, in my practice. I didn't need to before. Now I'm realizing, okay, when this stuff comes up, like I have a choice. I can either live in effect and be like, the people that are just accepting this to be a completely conspiracy theory type, pandemic and live in that space of fear. But I think that knowledge, when applied, is truly power. So knowing what I know now, knowing that what we know and what we have the ability to know when it comes to this type of conversation really allows us to empower ourselves to avoid being that way for long periods of time. Because my focus is healthy immune system, healthy connection to my networks, to my family, to God, to the universe, and a healthy connection to myself, right? In terms of, again, staying in flow state. The goal is always flow. So if I were experiencing fear, that wouldn't have me in flow.
So let's talk about that, because you mentioned a fun word, woo-woo. I love that. And then we talked about all these great broad types of terms. So another great NLP that I'm working with, her name's Kristen Lake. We actually are collaborating on a book called The Science and Art of Practical Woo. So I know, right? So let's take one of those woos off and let's pull it down into real. So let's not way over here or way over there. Let's talk about something that right now, today, maybe you woke up and had some fear or anxiety around, something that you have fear around. And I want to know, how did you get, in very step-by-step, very practical terms, from 10 years ago, Fasana, to, okay, I woke up this morning, had this fear, going to share this fear with you guys now. And then here's the steps that I did that worked for me. So how do you get from not pulling the blankets over your head, being able to get on a call, and have me ask you that type of vulnerable question?
Right. This is one of the reasons I love you so much, because you're one of those very grounded, very anchored people in my life who kind of bring me down when it comes to me living in the clouds. Because that's
great.
What's interesting. And again, this is just my authentic truth. So it's going to resonate with who it resonates with. And for other people, my goal whenever I communicate or speak or provide my perspective is always set on the intention of, God, allow me to really bless and impact the people who are looking to hear my words, who are looking to hear my message, who are looking to benefit from my levels of confidence and, learn the strategies of becoming who they authentically are based on me sharing how I did the same thing. Right. So it's a great question. It is a practice. I think I have my true mission statement, Marcus, is that self-love heals all. It doesn't matter what is going on externally to us. As human beings, there's an entire universe that exists within us. So when you really understand that universe, that world, and that exists within you, I like to look at our mind and our bodies as systems. When you learn how to master both of those systems, it's easier for you to be in a more confident state of your authentic self. That's really the goal. And that's what I talk about this all the time. I want everyone to understand that you have, we could call it a soul blueprint that's deep within you. The question is, you've always been that person, but are you willing to do the work to really release the conditioning that you might have been raised with, or that you might have believed based on friends, family, school systems, the media, to believe as truth when they're not in fact truth, right? So going back to your question, how do I explain how I went from the Fasana who experienced fear, anxiety, nervousness,
or even just today, what are you afraid of today? And then what steps did you take to release that fear and work through it?
So let's break down. Number one, you have to pay attention to where you are focusing. Your thoughts become things in every and any event. So number one would be to first it would be ask yourself, do I want to take myself from being frightened and experiencing fear to learn how to be more calm and focused? Because this conversation is going to apply to the people who say, yes, please, that's what I want to know, right? This is all, it's always about self-empowerment with me. So that would be the first thing. The answer is yes. Look at what your focus is on, right? It's really about shifting your focus, because once you can do that, like what I had to do, I didn't have to do it, I chose to do today, is focus on what I had planned during my day. This conversation with you was at the top of my list of priorities. So I thought about the positive impact that we can create together. I thought about the fact that I'm excited and so honored to be present in this conversation with you. We've been behind the scenes masterminding by ourselves for quite some time now. So I thought about how I can show up to be the best version of myself. And then I thought about the version of myself that lives in fear and that was experiencing the anxiety and just the uneasiness. It's almost like this, like you look around you and you don't really know what the heck is going on, but it feels very icky and uncomfortable. And personally, I like to be the most confident version of myself, not that version that's like, what's going on? Like, it just doesn't work for what I'm here to do on this earth, right? So I did some yoga. I had a bulletproof coffee. I had conversations with God, of course. It's a daily thing. It's a momentary thing, actually. And then I thought about, coming on here, having this conversation with you, and just literally speaking my truth. Because, we've had conversations in the past where when people try and be like other people and focus on lanes outside of their own, it's really, really tough to step into the level of authentic leadership that, I can't stop talking about it. It's like my super passion in life. It's what I'm all about. So my question today was, okay, well, do I just cancel on Marcus? Should I just flop on this call and not show up? Or should I show up in a state of panic and fear? And guys, the thing is that if you're experiencing that, like, I want you to also know that it's okay. It's okay. It's normal to be going through stuff like that. It sucks. Like, let's just be honest. What's happening right now sucks for many reasons. And yet at the same time, it goes back to asking ourselves, okay, well, what can we do, right? How can we make light of this situation? So again, for me, I'm really big on mindset. So it's really about realigning and centering myself from inside out and focusing on what I'm looking to put my energy towards creating versus what sucks in the world. Because I can't do anything, personally speaking, about what's happening. And I'm aware of that. So it's kind of that conversation about, understanding what you are actually in control of versus worrying about the things that you can't control.
Right.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting. So Fasana and I, we have been friends for a few years and we've done some great work together. Of course, as you said, your life has been a fantastic journey over the last little while, and we haven't had an opportunity to hang out. Recently, I've introduced a new signature talk, and I want to share a condensed version of it right now, and it's called 7 Foot Fears. And the premise of 7 Foot Fears is that you're right. All of us experience fear, and that's okay. That's okay. The challenge is that when you have a 7 foot fear, that's overwhelming, because I'm pretty sure there's nobody on this call that's 7 feet tall or over 7 feet tall. So when we do have that fear, whether it's a bigger or smaller fear, doesn't matter. If it feels 7 feet tall, then it's going to overwhelm us. And the first step to releasing fear in this signature talk is to do what we're doing right now, is to discuss it, to open it up. Because how big is your room? 10 by 12. Well, 7 feet doesn't seem quite so big in a 10 by 12 foot room. And then you talk about the universe and God and source, and how big is that? Well, it's infinitely larger than whatever fear we're carrying ourselves. So the moment we share fear is the first step to actually releasing fear. And that's basically the signature talk. So part of why we opened up these daily sessions to the public during, the pandemic is so that everybody has that opportunity to share whatever fear they're facing today. And I'll actually be honest with you, I'll go first, and I'm going to give everyone an opportunity if anyone wants to take this moment to share some fear and release it out to the universe so it's not quite so big. You actually nailed on what my fear was. There have been times you flaked on me in the past, and this has been very important to me to have, people I respect, love, and admire that are subject matter experts on these calls to help support my community and the public. And when I saw your missed call this morning, I was like, oh no, something came up for her. There's always something came up, right? And I was afraid. And I almost didn't want to call you back, and yet I did. And when I called back, and that fear was released because you were committed, you were excited. We actually started talking right then and there. I was like, whoa, no, stop it. Let's save it for the Zoom call. So that was my fear. And the way I resolved it was simply by facing it head on and calling you because I was afraid. So that was part of what I felt today. And there's always fear. I still have a little bit of fear surrounding number of participants, because for me, it's always been about the big audiences, which I've had. But you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because the smaller groups, as I've learned, Natasha's learned this with me a lot too, we can serve a lot more people in the smaller groups. It can be a lot more personalized experience. So it's not about volume, it's about quality of service, right?
Absolutely.
So what I'd like to do is, we do have a few people on with us. I'm just gonna no one's muted, you've muted yourselves, but if anyone, I don't want to hog up the whole conversation. This is for you guys. So if you're facing any type of fears right now, let's just get it out there. Fasana is trained in this kind of stuff far more than I am. Everyone in this call right now knows me, so you know that I have my own approach to how we can go through these processes, but this is for you. So unmute yourself, tell us a challenge you're facing right now, and let's work through it together, okay? Have our best day possible, because Fasana's right. Daily reset. Don't let it continue on a day longer, a moment longer.
Absolutely.
Don't make me pick somebody.
Yeah, guys, come on. Don't be shy.
And it's not forced. It's a public call.
I'm trying to think
Danielle.
of like,
Perfect.
But I honestly can't come up with anything because I'm fairly a relaxed guy.
You say that, and yet you still have a ton of fears. Here's the difference. So Danielle, we're on our second business together now. Danielle specializes in messenger bots, which is really in demand suddenly. Cool. Now, Danielle is a little younger, 20 years old, and is pretty chill for a 20-year-old. However, if I may, Danielle, the way I noticed that you have dealt with fears is complacency. You just kind of shove it off, but never actually really resolve it. You compartmentalize it. It's just kind of there, and you avoid it as opposed to actually resolving it. So you don't freak out about things. That's just one way people deal with fear. You tend to just put it in a box and then leave it alone.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So, that now I'm going to shut up and let Fasana talk to that.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, when is it my turn to weigh in on this part? Okay. So, and your name is pronounced Danielle?
Yes. Daniel.
Yeah, okay. Daniel. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, nice to meet you, first of all.
Nice to meet you.
I have a question about, around this concept of putting your fear in a box and just kind of like, without acknowledging it, just moving forward. Is that fear self-sabotaging to you? Are you still hitting your goals? Are you still being productive? Are you still executing tasks? Are you still doing what your coach or mentor advises you to do or suggests that you do?
I believe so. Typically those fears, when I get to a low point, actually accelerate me and I end up doing more. It's typically like my process. If I hit a low point, it's a complete 180 right after.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I had a feeling you're going to say that. The reason I asked, because I'm the exact same way. And, yes, it's important to acknowledge, again, we're all uniquely programmed and designed, right? Yeah. So for me, some people will say that fear is a motivator for them, right? In my training, one thing that we learned in regards to productivity and energy is to move towards what you desire rather away from what you don't want. Does that make sense? It's a moving
Yeah.
towards strategy versus
Yeah.
away from what you're afraid of, essentially. So I often do go over what I'm afraid of, or what I'm like, I'll be very honest to myself in my conversations with God and with my mentor or my coach if it's necessary, and I notice that it's slowing me down and it's not allowing me to be productive. Because at the end of the day, all we're really entrepreneurs, like one of our main focuses is on performance, right?
Yeah.
So that's really good to hear. You know, like I think we're on the same team when it comes to that, because we all deal with fear different. The question really is, okay, but are you performing? Are you putting your best foot forward? Are you operating from the standard of excellence that you desire to for yourself? Yes or no? Right? And if it's a yes, then cool. You're dealing with the fear in a great way. If it's a no, okay, then you should probably talk to Marcus about that. Hear his brilliance and his strategies, right? When it comes to that.
No, I was very much before, is my fear would immediately pretty much turn into anger. Yeah. And then my anger would drive me to then do what I wanted to do. However, Marcus, I don't think I ever told you this, but do you remember, so me and Marcus were in the car driving back from London, and he essentially had a conversation with me about letting go. Just let go. So I was not good at that. I was just angry about everything. And that was driving me. And for whatever reason, I listened to Marcus. So I was, just one day, like 3 weeks later, I realized I wasn't angry. Like, it was just, I had let go. Right?
That's beautiful.
And
no, I didn't know that.
Now, I had a very weird in-between period in which I wasn't driven anymore because the anger had been driving me. So I was doing things out of habit, but the drive wasn't really there. And I have kind of rediscovered it without the anger. But yeah, that was my main way of handling it before. But now it's because I'm in like a new way of handling it. I can't really say it's anger anymore. So I'm still trying to figure out how I work now, because this is a relatively new development.
So first of all, that's awesome. Congrats on that. There's another approach I'll explain as well. It's actually from my mentor, my business mentor, Colin Sprake, and he calls it EMRO, E-M-R-O. So it's event, meaning, response, outcome. An event is simply an event. It happens. And actually, I can challenge anyone listening to this call or watching this on YouTube or Facebook later, is I can say this with certainty. You have never been upset by a single thing that has ever happened to you in your life, because they were just events. It wasn't the event that was upsetting. It was the meaning that you attached to the event, right? And then that gives you a response that's probably not favorable, and then you end up with a crappy outcome. So when we change the meaning to the events, we can change the response and get a different outcome. Right? And that's a constant process. Again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is testing things. So Dan, sounds like you went from, an event would occur, your meaning would anger you. So you would bring anger towards it, or that would be your response because of the meaning you associated to it. You were offended or talked down to, or whatever it was that would make you angry. And then the outcome would be rage, which isn't healthy, but then you would learn to channel that rage into spurts of productivity. Which almost is a bad behavior, because then what that encourages you to do is, okay, I need to be productive, and you may subconsciously be finding ways to get angry about things.
There was a long time in which in my head, it was a dilemma in my head. I was like, do I want to let go? Because I knew that once I let go, I would have no drive. Like, I knew that was going to happen.
Right.
So it was like, for a while, I almost fought it. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to, but it just kind of happened one day. So I was like, okay.
Well, it's like watching the Avengers movie and the evolution of the Incredible Hulk, right? And that famous line from the end of the first Avengers, here's a little secret, I'm always angry, right? And then you end up with him in the last movie as this calm, funny Professor Hulk that really nobody liked. But that's a whole other conversation. So again, if you change the meaning of the event into something different, and respond to it differently. So now, for example, you're like, meh, right? You're like, things don't really affect you. Meh. You put it to the side, but it still might have some fear. And now you're using that fear to motivate you. So the next evolution of that is test the meaning and let your response be something positive. And that comes through some of the daily practices that we were talking about. Like, Fasana was talking about, and this actually happened to me this morning, so I'll talk about myself and not talk on her behalf. When I woke up this morning and was doing my gratitude practice, I was frustrated. I was angry. that there's still people in my community, my immediate community, that are still going about their days. Like one of my friends is a local politician, and every day he's posting about all these different places he's going. And I'm like, wow, like that's crappy leadership, stay home. Like, and it frustrated me. And I attached a meaning of disappointment and who does he think he is and all these other things. But the truth is that I don't need to take that on. So instead, I sincerely just put out positive energy, praying for him, protecting him, hoping that he gets the message and starts to do his part to flatten the curve, that kind of stuff. And
Right.
it completely changed my response. My response was, okay, I'm good now. And the outcome is I've had an incredibly productive morning since about 6 a.m. this morning. I
Right.
got so much done, which I probably wouldn't have if I had that little bit of nagging hostility in the back of my head. So yeah, it's always a state of evolution, and it's always a practice. Natasha, for those of you that don't know, is actually my business partner on here, my chief financial officer. Her and I don't always get along, and it's always learning these steps of how do we best relate to each other? How do we release and let go, and how do we change behaviors and be able to have the freedom to talk about that stuff openly? So today's topic is, I'm really glad she's here for that, and it's very dear to me that, every work culture has that. So Fasana, do you have some tips, let's say non-business tips, but not all families are used to being together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I know some people have shared previously that things are starting to get a little bit uncomfortable at home.
Yeah.
What kind of tips do you have for how to get through those types of events?
I think that acknowledging your healthy boundaries is important, right? If you're someone introverted, communicating to your loved ones that you're going to spend some time alone, or you can do things in the house like take baths, or get cozy in bed and read. Like you said just now, communication is a major key, whether it's personal relationships or professional relationships. So long as you are communicating your desires, your needs, your wants, I think that's important. I think it's also important to understand where each individual in the household may be coming from. Put your feet in their shoes. Be more compassionate. That's something that I'm really stepping my game up when it comes to assisting more around the house. Helping out mom more so that she's not getting going nuts in her own world, taking care of everyone on a larger scale than what she usually does. Yeah, I think that it's really about getting creative in this time and space. I mean, we're for the most part all entrepreneurs, right? So we know how to tap into our creative energy easily and effortlessly at this point. So get creative. Pull out some board games, play some cards. I mean, again, it goes back to scheduling, right? I have a very disciplined schedule that my family is all very aware of. And now that everyone's home, it's a little bit louder in the house. There's more action going on. I'm tempted to kind of sneak downstairs and see what's going on, what everybody's up to, or what they're watching on TV, or whatever the case is. But yeah, I think it's just about communicating yourself, staying as calm as you can, understanding that we're all going through something that is putting us out of our own comfort zones. And so just leading from the heart, really.
Right. And I'm sure actually Natasha could probably contribute to that. She's our crucial conversations specialist in our team, and has taught me a lot about that type of stuff. Natasha, I don't know if you're actually still there because everything's muted and your video's off. Do you have anything that you can contribute to that?
I'm still here. I think the big thing is you have to create that safe space to have those conversations that Fasana was talking about. I know tons of people who are like, oh my God, it's been 12 hours and I'm losing my mind. And anything you say to them is just going to be, in their eyes, like aggressive. Even if it's something like, hey, what can I do to help? And they're like, clearly you can't do anything because you can't be here right now. Like, but I think if you just like kind of keep that, like Fasana said, keep that communication open and just be aware. Be like, look, I know you're kind of cranky right now, totally understandable, but we are here if you need anything, even just like a Zoom call to be like, get some interaction, that kind of thing. I know quite a few companies that are doing daily Zoom calls or weekly Zoom calls. I know my WhatsApp has exploded with numerous new group chats, so we can share funny things and things like that, which is actually a lot compared to what it used to be. I was a part-time healthcare worker doing such. I had to go into isolation for 2 weeks. Back then, it was a very different experience from what it is now. So I think it's just, you know, people are good people. Just kind of keep reaching out to those that you love and trust, and they'll do the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like we're so blessed is the word. We're so fortunate that we live in a time where, you know, right now the way we can save the world is by sitting at home and doing nothing. I mean, how often do you get a chance to, you know, succeed by doing nothing? And here we are, and people are like, but I want to do something. And that's a whole other conversation. But we're so lucky because we have streaming services on TV. We have Zoom calls. I mean, we can do watch parties on Facebook and still have like a virtual party together. Like we live in so much privilege because there's so many people in the world right now going through this that don't have that opportunity. So yeah, it's important. I was talking about this with my wife last night, and I don't have a solution for this. And maybe this is something that we can talk about in the conversations after today is, what about the people in self-isolation that are in abusive relationships, right? What about people that live alone and they don't have care workers coming by anymore and suffer from mental illness or forms of dementia and things like that? I mean, there's a lot of people even here in North America where you know, being in self-isolation may not be seen as a positive thing, especially if it continues long-term. So how do we reach out to our community, and how do we get these people to know, hey, you don't have to feel like you're alone? How do we get them to hop on the Zoom calls and things like that? But you're right. It's important to have people you trust and love. I'm grateful every day, even if I don't necessarily, you know, show it as well as I could, because I'm always working on me as well. I love each of you guys very much. You all have very special, unique relationships with me. Grateful that we got to share some time today. Nicole, you're the only one that hasn't said anything today. You don't have to say anything today, but I know you've been here the entire time. I appreciate you being here. Is there anything that you're challenged with today that Fasana can help you through, or that you'd like to just share how things have shifted for you? Because your business was very much hands-on, pardon the pun. So what's going on with you?
I think my biggest thing is I don't do downtime.
Right. Yeah. So
like
yeah.
my business has been gangbusters for the past year and a half, and I have nothing to do.
Right.
It's crazy. Like where everyone else is saying, you know, they're writing books and they're doing all these things. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I get it. And actually, yeah, knowing you, I can attest to that. I mean, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to do nothing. But believe it or not, nothing is still a verb. Right? Doing nothing is still an action, right? And we've talked about this many times, taking 3-hour breaks during your work week kind of thing, which, you know, right now is a lot more than 3 hours. So here's some ideas for you. I mean, I know you've got time with Garrett, which was last year something you wanted more than anything. So there's an opportunity, which is wonderful, to be spending more time together, recently married especially, so that's wonderful. I know that with the way your business was going, you were expanding and looking to onboard. So now all that stuff you and I have been working on, getting those onboarding systems in place so that when things pick up again, you're not behind the curve, you're ahead of the curve. Like there's so many things, if you want to stay busy, that you could be staying busy with right now.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. And that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think really it's finding what you actually enjoy that brings you a little bit of peace. I think that's very needed for you is just, how do you do something? It doesn't have to be nothing. My wife has got a term she calls blobbing, where essentially she just will sit on the couch for a day and catch up on shows. And that happens once every couple of weeks. And when she's a couch blob, I know not to interrupt or bother her, because that's her space to process and unwind and let go and all of these things we've talking about. That's part of her practice to reset and ground herself. So it's important to have something like that for yourself, for sure.
I think it's just navigating that right now, because it's so far from what I usually do.
Right. Well, and it's no different from the process we've talked about. Test everything, right? So if you test yoga in the mornings, do it for a couple of days. I'd say 3 days is more than enough to test whether it's working or not. And if you're like, nope, not for me, cool. You say you don't write books. Have you ever attempted to write a book? If not, give it 3 days. Write down some random thoughts, right? When I started doing these Zoom calls, especially opening it to the public, this is not something I typically do. And, we gave it a few days, and it's been going for almost 2 weeks now. And it seems to be, being more and more effective as we move forward with it. So just keep testing new things and measure what the results are. And as always, figure out what you want the result to be before you start measuring. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for a sense of peace? Are you looking for a sense of purpose? Are you looking for something just to distract your mind so you don't go crazy? Like, what is the end goal? And then figure out things you can test to get there, right?
Right.
Love that.
Okay. Thank you for hopping on and sharing. I appreciate it. And of course, all of you know that if you need myself, if you need my team, we're here. No questions asked. We are here for whatever you need during this time. It's why we're doing what we do. There's a couple of things we're working on in the background that I won't talk about yet because we haven't finalized them, but they could be of even more assistance during the pandemic. Fasana,
Yes.
I would love for you to wrap up our call. Is there anything you could do to spark some joy and just bring it all together for us at the end?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you all for investing your time in being here with us today. I know that we're all dealing with this to the best of our abilities here. And this is so incredible because you've got such a beautiful leader like Marcus in your circle. Be resourceful in this time. For Nicole, I mean, there are probably parts of yourself that you can creatively explore, right? And just deepen your own levels of self-awareness and self-love during this time. Like Marcus said, there's always something that you can do. If you like being busy that way and you want to continue on that kind of, in that flow for yourself, then you can create so much in the time and space that you have so that you don't go crazy just doing nothing, right? Natasha, it was so beautiful just connecting with you briefly and meeting you on this call. I'm buzzing here, so I'm going to just throw this down here so I can stay present with you. Sorry about that. And then Danielle, it was great just hearing your perspectives on self-awareness. And I mean, I've been there too, where it's like, okay, if I eliminate and reduce the scarcity thoughts or fear from my mind, what the heck's going to motivate me? Because that's where I come from. That's how I was raised. That's my conditioning. So I've been there too. And again, we can reinvent ourselves each and every day. In fact, you guys, we can reinvent ourselves. We actually are reinventing ourselves moment by moment. Your levels of consciousness and awareness are different now after being on this hour call with us than they were coming into it, right? We are teleological beings. We are beings who are growth oriented. And so I think that for all of us, the best advice that I can give, if I were giving advice to myself included, it's just realign yourself to your goals. What are you focusing on? Allow those goals to drive you, whether it's health, relationship, or business related. This is a time where we really get to sort of reinvent ourselves, so to speak. So use this time as positively, as productively, and as wisely as you can, and give yourself permission to creatively express yourselves to the best of your ability, because you never know what may come up, right? What may come up in spending time drawing. When's the last time any of us have just picked up a pen and paper or grabbed some paint and get artistic in life, right? We're always so used to the conditioning of being busy with our days and our work and our projects. Well, I wonder what would happen if we did invest more time into ourselves and into the creative side of ourselves. What would come up from that? What would result from that? So give yourselves permission and just do what you can and contribute. And if you feel the need, like myself, to sort of, stay in bed under the covers for a little bit longer just to realign energetically, do that too. It's really about coming together as community and also remembering to take care of yourself first.
Right. I have nothing to add to that. So thanks again, Fasana, for being on. Stay on the call after if you would.
Sure.
And yeah, everyone else, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you,
Reach
guys.
out if you need anything at all. Fasana, I'll put some of her information up in the link for this so you can reach out to her directly as well. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. We have a great guest tomorrow. Nicole, I need a favor from you as well, so I'm going to message you separately, okay? Okay. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys. Ciao for now.